What does Brandon Beane have to get figured out this season? I'm delivering his to-do list today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, not the number one sports podcast network. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate you all being here very, very much. Well, folks, welcome in. It's time to deliver Brandon Beane's offseason to-do list. I want to go through each position and tell you specifically what Brandon Beane has to get done. And we've spent the last couple weeks really reviewing and assessing this roster, and it really culminates with this conversation that will really identify what's got to happen with this roster. Now, of course, step one is creating salary cap space. I hope that you will scroll back a couple of episodes and listen to me break down the different possibilities that exist for the salary cap, where I don't think it's difficult at all to create $40+ million of functional cap space to work with, to use on this roster and improve this roster. So that's step one. And keep that in mind as we go through this. This is going to feel heavy. This is going to feel like there's a lot for him to do. Just keep in mind that there is a reasonable amount of flexibility to make moves and improve this roster and check all the boxes that he needs to check. So let's dive into it. We'll start with a quarterback position. Under contract, the Bills have Josh Allen and Shane Buechele. What do they need to do here? They got to sign a backup quarterback. And, of course, that could be as simple as bringing back Mitchell Trubisky, but maybe not. Maybe there's a different path that they want to go through. I don't feel like Shane Buechele is a player I'd be comfortable with being one snap away from him being the guy. So you got to get your QB2 figured out. It could be as simple as bringing back Mitchell Trubisky. At wide receiver, there's a bigger conversation to have. Under contract, the Bills have Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Tyrell Shavers, who's probably going to miss almost the entire season with the ACL. Curtis Samuel is technically under contract, although I fully expect him to be released. And then you have futures contracts in Jalen Virgil, McCole Hardman, and Steven Gosnell. So what do the Bills need to do here? Well, step one is release Curtis Samuel, free up that $6.1 million in cap space. Then you need to find two things, in my opinion. You need to find verticality. You need some receivers that can legitimately win down the field, not only to give the Bills more of a big play threat vertically, but also just improve your spacing. When you have that type of guy that can really push the roof of the defense, it's going to open up a lot for the other players, especially guys like Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir, who kind of thrive in those underneath areas. You got to find a receiver that legitimately can win down the field. You also need to find a receiver, to me, that is a volume target that demands the football. And this could be the same player. You could get a player that wins vertically and also demands a lot of volume. But in some way, shape, or form, you need a vertical presence, and you need a guy that you want to throw the ball to a lot because they get open and make plays. You need it. You've got room to add on a guy that can get every bit of 100+ targets for your passing offense. So I'm looking for some big moves here at receiver. Definitely somebody that demands the football. And there's going to be a lot of different ways to do this stuff. They could trade for a receiver. They could maybe sign one, draft one. There's going to be a lot of ways to do it, but find verticality, find somebody that can demand targets, and you're excited about it. That's one of the huge primary needs of this football team. At tight end, under contract, the Bills have Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Jackson Hawes, and Kaleki Letu. What do they need to do here? Well, they got to figure out the right plan with Dawson Knox. If he's back, which I think there's a reasonable case to be made that he should and will be back, well, all right, you're good. You love the way that this room looks. It's phenomenal. If you wind up letting go of Dawson Knox, which is totally possible, I do think that you're going to want to get better in terms of your depth at tight end. And so maybe that's a modest draft pick. Maybe that's a modest veteran addition, but you're going to want somebody that you have a level of comfort with playing and providing depth. I know that Hawes is a really good blocker. Kincaid's a good, receiving piece. Knox was kind of like both, right? You got a little bit of both, and he was a very valuable player, and I'd be worried if the Bills didn't have Dawson Knox or a player like Dawson Knox. So figure out the right plan with Dawson Knox, which could ultimately wind up meaning finding another tight end that you're going to roster and play. And then let's talk fullback and running back. Under contract, the Bills have James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, and Frank Gore Jr. signed to a futures deal. So when it comes to running back, the Bills are in really good shape. If that was the Bills running back room next year, I'd be fine with it. Now, they'll need one more running back to bring to camp, right? The Bills have always had one more guy with Frank Gore, so they'll need to find the one more guy, probably a UDFA. And you're going to be fine at running back, assuming you don't move on from Ty Johnson. And there is a modest opportunity there to create some cap space. I'm not sure if the Bills will go down that road, but it's worth at least acknowledging. And so those top four backs, you're good to go. Bring in one more guy as a UDFA to make sure you have a couple running backs to get through the preseason. And, of course, get an exposure to a player, right, that maybe eventually you'll keep on your roster. But then you do have a need at fullback here, and that Reggie Gilliam is an expiring contract. So you either need to bring back Reggie Gilliam or replace Reggie Gilliam. And I hope that they just bring back Reggie Gilliam. He's proven himself in so many different ways, whether that's special teams, blocking. He's the best one in terms of tush pushing Josh Allen when 41's behind 17. I know they're going to get a first down. I don't know if that's going to be the case if it's someone else, but I know if Reggie Gilliam is pushing Josh Allen, that first down is going to happen. So he's a player I'd like to have back. All right, so we're just scratching the surface. Identified needs at quarterback, receiver, tight end, and then, of course, running back / fullback. Coming up next, we will spend some time in the trenches where the Bills have a ton to figure out, both offensively and defensively. We're doing that next, folks. Be sure to stick with me.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
All right, folks, welcome back. Let's dive into the trenches where there's a lot to discuss. Let's start with the offensive line. The Bills have under contract Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, Osiris Torrance, Tylen Grable, Cedric Van Granger, Chase Lunt, and then futures deals in Travis Clayton and Nick Broker. So the Bills need a lot here. They need a starting center with Connor McGovern being an expiring contract. They need a starting left guard with David Edwards being an expiring contract. And you also need some depth. And obviously a lot is going to depend on which players that are currently depth players maybe are transitioned to starters. Like if the Bills wind up looking at Cedric Van Granger as a guy that they want to be the starting center, well, now you need an interior depth piece. I mean, you're going to need an interior depth piece no matter what, but especially under a circumstance like that. So we'll have to see how the dust settles here, but based on the expiring contracts, the Bills need to find a starting center, a starting left guard, and depth, which is very different than the offensive line conversations we've had the last few years, where there's been a lot of continuity, and that'll probably be a lot different this year. And who knows, like maybe the Bills will bring back Connor McGovern. Maybe they will bring back David Edwards. But I'm kind of preparing for at least one, if not both of them to be gone. And then I'm very curious to see where it goes from there. So big needs along the offensive line, starting center, starting left guard, and depth. All right, moving on to the defensive side of the football. And I want to kind of look at these defensive front positions very individually. So nose tackle, 5 technique, 4-eye, and edge. Right, those will kind of be the positions here with this Jim Leonhard defense. At the nose, I suppose under contract, you could say Deion Walker would qualify as a nose in addition to Zion Logue, who signed a futures deal. And Zion Logue has a pretty translatable skill set to being a nose tackle in this type of defense. I'm not sure how much the Bills want to truly play Deion Walker at nose. This is a bit of a projection. They might want him playing out a little bit in wider alignments, especially on rundowns. So I'm not entirely sure what the vision plan is going to be for Deion Walker, but for now, I'll slot him here at nose and acknowledge that the need here is an early down run defender. Like you need a legitimate guy that can go in there and anchor and play over top of centers and own those A gaps. And the Bills need to find that player. And I don't think that's really Deion Walker. I think Deion Walker is more of a player that works laterally, finds a football, uses his upper body power, uses his lateral movement skills to make plays. He's not really a guy that's going to sit there and just be like a total fire hydrant or a tank against, drive blocks. That's really not a strength of his game. So that's why he doesn't really work as a traditional nose in this style of defense. So the Bills will need that early down run defender to play in the A gaps. At 5 technique, you look at Greg Rousseau and Landon Jackson as potentially a couple guys here that can handle those responsibilities. And I think in terms of what they need to find this offseason is legit depth that would play alongside Greg Rousseau at times, but also free up Greg Rousseau. I'm sure they're going to want to move him around a little bit as a 5, as sometimes a 4-eye, as sometimes a maybe even a stand-up edge defender, as a rush outside linebacker type player. So I think you're going to want more here, especially because Landon Jackson just doesn't feel like a player that you have any clarity on at this point. So you're going to want some legit depth that's going to play, that's going to challenge Landon Jackson, and it's going to free up Greg Rousseau. At the 4-eye, this is the player that would line up on the inside shoulder of the offensive tackle. So a little bit more of a penetration style role. This is where you're probably going to play Ed Oliver, TJ Sanders. It's where I think Dwayne Carter probably fits the best. And then as a futures deal player, the Bills also have Tommy Kingbasote in the mix. So what do the Bills need here? Probably just depth. I mean, in all reality, Ed Oliver and TJ Sanders could be a nice pair here at the 4-eye, and hopefully Dwayne Carter can come back and help as well, and you feel decent about that. So you're probably just looking for a modest veteran depth piece that has some experience in this type of role. And then when it comes to like edge rusher, like your outside linebacker, stand-up guys, the Bills have under contract Michael Hoyt, who is coming off of course, an Achilles injury that he suffered in, was it like week 8, something like that? You have Javon Solomon, who has not really caught on, but I think that this scheme shift will help him. And then Andre Jones, who I kind of qualify here as a guy that signed a futures deal. So what do the Bills need here? They need a legit impact guy. They need a player that can come in and give them burst and flexibility off the edge that is going to make a ton of plays. They need a legit impact player here. And they need depth. So I think you need a couple of rushers here off the edge that are going to play a decent amount. One like primary impact guy and then another meaningful depth piece. So you got a lot to get figured out here with this front. And as I've said before, that was always the case. If Sean McDermott was back and the Bills were going to run the same defense, they always needed a lot. They always needed another, hey, impact, you're going to play a ton, a depth player, right? Epinesa, Bosa, those are expiring contracts. You always needed a nose. Daquan Jones, expiring contract. Like, this is not, oh, they switch defenses and now they have more needs than they would have otherwise. That's not the case at all. They always needed a ton of stuff. So keep that in mind as you consider the defensive transition. Don't find yourself being frustrated that all of a sudden, air quotes, all of a sudden they have a lot to figure out. This was always the case, even if everything carried over from last year's defense. All right, we got more to do. We got to talk about the back seven on defense, special teams, and then I have organized this into primary needs, secondary needs, and ancillary needs, and we'll tie it all together here at the end. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, the inbox is overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open when the pressure's on, and you need to hire the right person. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute, I'll be talking to you about Indeed. Companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? Well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now not only can your picks cash, it can also send you to the NBA Finals. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, folks, we got more to do here. I want to talk about needs in the defensive back seven. We'll start with off-ball linebacker. And the Bills have Terrell Bernard, Dorian Williams, and Joe Andreessen under contract, with Jimmy Charlo and Keontae Jenkins as futures deals. I think the Bills need to find a starting caliber addition. I think Dorian Williams will be good. I think Joe Andreessen will benefit from the scheme change. I have no idea what to expect from Terrell Bernard. Yeah, you need a starting caliber addition here. Somebody that you feel like can come in and handle, nearly 100% of snaps. I think there's going to be some really economic options. I think about Justin Sternad from Denver as a player that looks starting caliber to me. It can be somebody like that. It's not like they got to go pay, Devin Lloyd $20 million a year to come be the middle linebacker, but they're going to need someone that's going to play a lot of snaps, and you're going to want to be happy that they're on the field a lot. So, yeah, another big primary need here. And then you could probably make the case that even more depth is necessary. Question marks. I really don't know what to expect from any of these players. So some depth along with a starting caliber addition feels necessary. At corner, the Bills have Christian Benford and Maxwell Hairston. They also have Dorian Strong, and who knows what the future looks like there. And then MJ Devonshire and Darryl Porter were signed to futures deals. So I think what the Bills really need at outside corner, we'll separate slot and do it next. At outside corner, they just need legitimate depth. And you really have to look at this player that you bring in is somebody that's going to have to play. The Bills have just consistently had to play their third corner, right? It's just been a thing. Benford's been banged up. Trey White's been banged up. Maxwell Harrison was banged up. It's just been kind of the deal. And so you got to get a third corner here that you feel like can step on the field. Now, if Dorian Strong were healthy, all right, you feel decent about that, but you would still need more depth. So they need to find legit cornerback depth on the outside. In the slot, under contract is Taron Johnson, and then Corey Couch signed a futures deal. What you need here is a plan. And part of that plan is considering if Taron Johnson can fill the nickel corner duties that you want for this defense. And if not, what are you going to do? Then you need a starting slot corner. And I don't know that Jim Leonhard will play as much, nickel defense as Sean McDermott did, but I think they'll still probably be in nickel 50 to 65% of the time. So you need a guy that's going to play. And you saw Devin Witherspoon, Marcus Jones. These are good slot players. They're valuable guys that were important for the Super Bowl. You saw, the Broncos slot player against the Bills, Jaquan McMillan. Looks really good, right? They also have Jahdae Barron as well. I mean, you're going to need some options here in the slot. And so maybe Taron Johnson's part of that, but you legitimately could need a slot player that's going to be on the field for half the snaps. At safety, the Bills have Cole Bishop, Jordan Hancock under contract. They technically have Taylor Rapp under contract, although I think they should release him and free up a little over $3 million in cap space. And then Wande Owens is also part of the mix. I think the Bills need a starter here. And maybe that's Jordan Hancock. Maybe. I don't think we gain much clarity on what he can do based on his rookie season, which I don't really blame him because he was trained at every spot in the secondary, and then all of a sudden they need him to play, and he's not super ready to play. Didn't get a chance to really showcase himself well. But point being is you still don't have a ton of clarity on what you have there. So maybe he's an option in the slot. Maybe he's an option at safety, but I think the Bills need to find a starting caliber safety to play next to Cole Bishop. And ideally one that can play in deeper alignments and allow Cole to serve in some lower alignments closer to the line of scrimmage and more to his strengths. You probably also need some depth as well. So a starter and some depth when it comes to the safety position. When it comes to special teams, the Bills have a kicker, Tyler Bass, under contract, and Maddox Trujillo. They have Reed Ferguson locked up at long snapper. They do not have a punter under contract, so they'll need to find a punter. And I also think they need to find a punt returner. Khalil Shakir does a good job of going back there and making sure the ball gets back to the offense, and I trust me, I value that. But it'd be nice for there to be some good returns along the way, that you can give Josh Allen some shorter fields. And so you need to get a punt returner, which obviously could be captured in, one of these other needs that we discussed. But you need to find a punt returner. So a lot of needs. And I have them broken down to primary needs, secondary needs, and ancillary needs. So here it is. Primary needs. And these are not necessarily ranked within. They're just noted as primary bucket, secondary bucket, ancillary bucket. So the order that I give them to you is not important. They're primary, secondary, or ancillary. In the primary needs bucket, an impact wide receiver, a starting center, a starting left guard, an impact edge defender, an early down nose tackle, a starting linebacker, and a starting safety. It's a lot, right? That's 7 primary needs to fill. Good news, I have even more secondary needs. You need a backup quarterback. You need a vertical wide receiver. You need offensive line depth. You need 5 technique depth. You need a rotational edge that's going to play, cornerback depth, a plan for the slot, a punter, and a punt returner. And then ancillary needs. You need a fullback. You need linebacker depth, safety depth, and 4-eye depth. It's a lot. But that's why team president of football operations and general manager Brandon Beane has the big title and the big salary. He's got to sort this out. And he has the resources. He can do it. We went through and very clearly identified how he can create every bit of $40+ million in cap space. What it comes down to is you got to pick the right players. You got to sign the right guys. You got to trade for the right guys. You got to draft the right guys. And give Joe Brady a real chance to get this team over the hump. A lot of needs. I don't feel like the Bills have entered an offseason with this many needs in a while. To be candid, right? Doesn't mean I think the Bills' reign as a contending team is over. I certainly don't believe that. But they have a lot to figure out. And to me, it's exciting because I think there's a lot of the needs are created because there's good transitions. Like players that have run their course. Like, all right, it's time for some new blood, some new ideas, some new schemes. Like all of it's like, it's not a bad thing that the Bills have needs in a new coaching staff. To me, that's actually a very favorable thing. And I'm excited for the new identity. The new energy. It already feels good to me. I'm excited. But I obviously a lot for Brandon Beane to get figured out. So, Brandon, if you're listening, we wish you well. And we're excited to see what you do. All right, folks, there you have it. Brandon Beane's off-season to-do list has been delivered, and we'll certainly be tracking this every step, right? That's the whole point of this. This sets the foundation for everything that's going to come. So I'm going to start to give you my ideas on how to fill these needs. And then we will be tracking how Brandon Beane fills these needs and see what this roster looks like entering the season. All right, folks, that's it for today. Thanks for being here. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.